This is the new Hyundai Ioniq 6, and it's a new electric car that promises head-turning looks, an incredibly long range and super fast charging speeds. But is it as good as it sounds? In this review, we're telling you everything that you need to know about this car and exactly how it compares to all of its rivals. But before we start, if you want to see lots more reviews like this, subscribe to our channel and go to whatcar.com for a great deal on your next car. The Ioniq 6 is quite unusual looking, isn't it? And it's based very closely on the Ioniq 5, but where that obviously is an electric SUV, as you can see, this is an electric saloon. There are some similarities between the two cars though, like the distance between the front and the rear wheels, and also like the Ioniq 5, you've got this kind of pixel style light motif going on, and you can see various different pixel elements on the Ioniq 6 around the car as well. But clearly overall, this looks ultimately very different from the Ioniq 5, and it's in a different class of car, so that means it's also got a different batch of rivals. Of course, as an electric saloon, inevitably the main competitor for this car is the Tesla Model 3, but there's also the BMW i4 and the Polestar 2 to consider as well. So different look, different rivals, slightly different interior compared to the Ioniq 5 as well, although there are a lot of similarities. But the differences are that you've got this more kind of swoopy design on the dashboard here, and this area is where a screen would go if you go for the optional extra digital door mirrors. If you do that, then the regular door mirrors are swapped for some cameras, and the camera display goes here, but it's almost £1,000 extra to do that, so it's quite difficult to recommend, to be honest. Other differences are that these screens have a black surround, which is different from the Ioniq 5. This whole centre console bit is new as well. So in the Ioniq 5, it's all open and spacious and airy down here, but now you've got this, which is split into two sections, giving you loads of storage underneath it. And up top, you've got your armrest with more storage, another storage tray in front of it. You've got two cup holders, wireless phone charging up front here, and also the controls for the windows are down here on the center console, which is slightly unusual. But if you own this car, that's going to be something that is going to be strange for the first day or two, and then you'll get used to it and it'll be absolutely fine. This also helps give a more kind of sporty feel in the Ioniq 6, so you do definitely feel lower than the Ioniq 5. You've got a more heavily raked windscreen here, so it just all feels lower, more cocooned in, and slightly more sporty as a result. And something else different from the Ioniq 5 is this steering wheel, which on higher trim levels gives you 4 LED lights here. And there are 4 because this apparently is the letter H in Morse code. And if you do have these LED lights, they light up when you're charging or when you put it in reverse or drive or something like that, but we don't have that on this entry-level car that we're in now. Again, on the higher trim levels, you can get Hyundai's relaxation seats, which very famously let you recline the front seat all the way back, so you can basically lie down while you wait for the car to charge, but we don't have that on this model. And actually the fabric trim that these seats have in this car don't feel particularly luxurious or even that nice, to be honest. But on the higher trim levels, that's when you can get fancy eco leather interiors, and you can have some brighter colours in here as well if you want to lighten things up too. But even on this entry-level trim, you get these two 12.3-inch screens here. This is your digital drive display, which, to be honest, I have a bit of a problem seeing all of it with where I want to have the steering wheel, so that is a bit annoying. But this touchscreen infotainment system next to it is pretty good. It's very big, very easy to see, but it's got quite a fiddly layout and the response time isn't absolutely amazing. But you get wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as standard, which is great. And the quality in here generally is pretty good. You have some soft touch materials here and there. It does all feel solidly put together. And you've got this nice design on the doors here with this ripple effect and this metal effect down here. So this isn't a completely knockout interior, but it does feel good and it does impress relative to everything else that this is up against. It's a shame the door bins are quite so small though. Now the big question is, can you have this dramatic swooping roofline and still fit people in the back of this car comfortably? Well, the answer is not really, because if you're 6 foot or over, you really will be struggling for headroom in here. I'm just about okay, but it's not particularly comfortable, and I can't sit up straight without my head touching the ceiling. So when it comes to headroom, there are a lot of other rivals which are more accommodating in the rear seats, which is a shame because the legroom that you have is ridiculous. It's like a limo in that respect, although there isn't much room for your feet under the seat in front, but it's great. You've got this nice flat floor, which just makes it feel really open and spacious, and obviously helps if you've got 3 people sat side by side. Now, another difference compared to the Ioniq 5 is the fact that these seats don't slide or recline like they can in that car. So, overall back here, legroom, amazing. Headroom, it is just a shame. But it might not be a deal breaker for you. You might only have tall people sat in the back every now and then, in which case, this will probably suit you fine. But if you are regularly going to put adults in these rear seats, there are other electric options which will suit you better. Now, the boot. This is a saloon, and it has this small, quite narrow saloon opening at the back. But what that hides is the fact that this actually has a really good boot. So in total, you can fit 7 of these carry-on size suitcases into the back here, and you can see just how far back this space goes. So 7 suitcases is the same you can fit in the Ioniq 5, which is an SUV, and the Kia EV6, and also the Polestar 2. Admittedly, a Model 3 can fit 10 suitcases in both of the boots that it has, but still, this is really surprisingly practical. It is a shame there isn't that much underfloor storage though. But you get a front boot, and in this rear-wheel drive model, it's big enough for this big chunky cable bag as well. Just bear in mind that if you go for an all-wheel drive model, then this space becomes a lot smaller. Every Ioniq 6 comes with a 74 kilowatt-hour battery, and a lot of the marketing spiel with this car goes on about how amazingly aerodynamic it is, with a very low drag coefficient of just 0.21, which would make you think this should be incredibly efficient. But we did some real-world testing with an Ioniq 6 and a Model 3. We put them through a controlled test route in pretty cold, wintry conditions, and the Ioniq 6 recorded an efficiency rating of 3 miles per kilowatt hour. In the same test, done at the same time in the same conditions, the Model 3 recorded 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So basically, don't get carried away thinking this is some groundbreakingly efficient electric car, because actually, in that respect, it's fairly ordinary. But don't let that detract from the fact that this has a fantastic electric range. Officially, it's said to be able to do 338 miles from a full charge, which puts this among some of the best EVs around in terms of range. It's among the best when it comes to charging speeds as well. The Ioniq 6 can accept a maximum charging rate of 220 kilowatts, which is a bit quicker than a Polestar 2, BMW i4 and entry-level Model 3. As a result, a 10 to 80% charge can take around 18 minutes if you find a charger powerful enough. And the good thing is, this isn't just an electric car that's impressive because of the numbers. Yes, it has a very good range, it charges very quickly, but it's also just a really nice thing on the road as well. There are 2 versions of the Ioniq 6 you can get. The entry-level car is rear-wheel drive with 1 electric motor, and it has 225 brake horsepower, which helps it do 0 to 62 miles per hour in around about 7.4 seconds. The quicker, more expensive version of this car gets 2 electric motors, 4-wheel drive, and 321 brake horsepower. That means it's quite a bit quicker than the entry-level car, and it will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in around about 5.1 seconds, which is really quick. Even the entry-level version is pretty quick. However, of course, a Model 3, the fastest versions of that car are just still in another league compared to most other electric cars. Still, the straight line pace in the Ioniq 6 is very good. It's not, though, a really engaging or fun car to drive. The steering is very light, the control weights are also very light, so it's not got a kind of weighty, engaging feel to it. But everything about the Ioniq 6 is pretty effortless in the way it goes about things. So it's very smooth, very simple to drive, and it's got a really nice ride and handling balance. So you can go down a really twisty country road and there's lots of grip, there's hardly any body lean, and things are very comfortable really. The 20-inch alloys that you get can thump over speed bumps and road imperfections a bit more than you'd notice in an Ioniq 5, which also feels a little bit more settled. This does have a kind of fidget to the ride every now and then, but still, this is definitely an electric car which is nicely cushioned and comfortable and relaxing. And perhaps the most impressive thing about this on the road actually is the refinement, because especially on the motorway, this is really, really quiet. It's even quieter than the Model 3. Interestingly, there's hardly any difference in price between the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6. However, that's when you compare equivalent models. If you look at the starting prices of both of these cars, then that's where there is a noticeable difference. And the reason for that is, with the Ioniq 5, you can get a smaller, cheaper battery, which doesn't travel as far on a full charge, and that isn't available with the Ioniq 6. Compared to the wider EV market, this is cheaper than a BMW i4, but a bit more expensive than a Polestar 2. But the Tesla Model 3, which had a price cut at the start of this year, just looks outstanding value compared to all of those rivals. And then when you add in the fact that the Model 3 has better rear seat space than the Ioniq 6, it's got an even bigger boot, it's got a better infotainment system, it's quicker, it's more efficient. So all things considered, even after all these years, the Model 3 still looks very tough to beat. But even if the Ioniq 6 isn't the single greatest outright electric car that you can buy right now, there is still lots to like about this car. It's got a great range, it's nice inside, it's also incredibly quiet and generally very impressive on the road. So this is definitely a great electric option to have. And if you want to find out more about the Ioniq 6, then you can read our extended written review of not only this car, but every other car around on whatcar.com. And you can also get a great saving on the next car that you want to buy. But before you go, tell us in the comments below what you think of the Ioniq 6 and subscribe to our channel to see lots more car reviews like this.